Welcome to the Healthy Way Podcast with Shahi. I'm your host, Shahi. My intention with this podcast is to teach and inspire you to reach your maximum potential in your health and life, and to become the healthiest and best version of you. I will be interviewing world-class international experts in the health and wellness global community. Our topics include lifestyle, nutrition, fitness, mindset, and spirituality. Periodically, I will also be tackling health topics that I'm passionate about sharing with you. Either way, you're in for a treat. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our time together. A term that's getting very popular and is usually tossed around in normal conversations is the term self-love. We would often hear or read somewhere something like, you have to love yourself more, or why don't you love yourself? Or something like, if you only loved yourself, this wouldn't have happened to you. We also hear, you just can't love another person until you love yourself first. These are just a few of the self-love advices or prescriptions that we either give or get to suggest for a person for a more fulfilling, healthy way of living. In today's episode, we are going to zoom in on what exactly self-love is, and we'll also address ways that you can start applying today in your life to feel even more fulfilled. Our guest today is Mandy Schut, transformational self-love coach, and Mandy helps people create balance through unconditional self-love. Welcome, Mandy. So excited to have you in my episode for today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So let's start from the beginning. I think a good place to start from would be to maybe define what self-love is. So why don't you introduce us to what is self-love?
Well, to me personally, self-love is being able to unconditionally and unapologetically be there for yourself, and also accept all the facets that come with that beautiful diamond that you are. Because most of the time we focus so much on one part of our being, but being able to love oneself means that you love every single facet of yourself and are able to take great care of yourself that way.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that definition. So, yeah, you have to love every part of yourself. I really love that. So let me ask you, what reflects lack of self-love? What would reflect lack of self-love, do you think?
Well, lack of self-love would reflect people having either anxiety or depression or feeling super unfulfilled and sad in their day-to-day life. And for some of them, that may mean that they become more introverted, whereas normally they'd be more extroverted, or that could mean that they become more extroverted when normally they'd be more introverted. I think the main signs are that some of us, when it comes to lack of self-love, wear this mask that we use to cover up our true feelings. And so to the outside world, we appear to be happy when in fact we're not. And that comes with a lot of self-loathing and self-judgment. And that causes for us to not be able to love ourselves.
So would you say that if you're genuinely happy, you would, that's maybe a sign that you have self-love, like if you feel genuinely happy?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're genuinely happy when you love yourself, but I think that's a great indicator, right? And when we look at our personal thermometers, we know exactly where we fall off the wagon, and when the thermometer becomes too hot for us to grasp. And in those moments, we know that something is not sitting right within us. But in the moments where we're balanced and happy and genuinely fulfilled, then we are more able to look at ourselves and accept ourselves for the way we are. It doesn't necessarily mean that our self-love is going through the roof, because most of the time it isn't for most people, but it does mean that we are able to live more with ourselves and accept ourselves on a deeper level than we ever have before.
That's beautiful. And how about people who tend to judge themselves all of the time? Would that still be an indication of lack of self-love?
Definitely. Yeah, because self-judgment and self-hatred is one of the lowest frequencies and vibrations you can be in as a human being. So when we look at ourselves and look at ourselves in the eye and tell ourselves that we're not good enough or we should have done more today, then that will lower our entire vibration. And that's not good for our self-love, right? Because imagine this, there's been this experiment done with plants. And so one of the plants, people were saying nice, loving words. And to the other plant, people were saying things that were so low vibrational that actually in the end, the plant to whom they were saying low vibrational things actually died or got really sick. And the one they were telling loving things to, saying loving things to, was thriving and being vibrant. And that's the same how it works with us, right? Because we have all these molecules in our bodies, and it's up to us what vibration we want to feed ourselves when it comes to our worthiness. And when it comes down to self-love, it is so, so important to, maybe not always, because sometimes that's not attainable, but most of the time, feed ourselves with good vibrational energy. And that also comes in the words we speak towards ourselves.
I love that. That's really beautiful, because the fact that you realize that you have a choice by just saying good words to yourself, or really not being over judgmental to yourself, or getting rid of judgment, self-judgment. It will support you in loving yourself more. So that's really great. Now, what if we'd like to give like a prescription to our listeners of like maybe practices that could improve their self-love or help them getting rid of this really self-judgment that's not doing them any good. So what would be your advice of something that they can practice like right away, like today?
Well, of course, it's always easier said than done. And if we really want to tackle this problem, in quotation marks, then we need to get to the root of it. And the root of self-judgment is most of the time things that have happened in the past, or things that we, in our own eyes, didn't do right in the past, right? So it all has to do with the trauma we've experienced, and that causes for us to be super hard on ourselves today. And so two practices that I have found to be super powerful and potent are practices that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So the first one is a practice that will actually help you to start getting rid of self-judgment, right? When you are that person that wakes up feeling super angry at themselves or talks themselves down all the freaking time, then this is something that could help. And of course, with every practice, there's a starting point. And for this practice, all we need to really set in stone before we start practicing this is being able to catch ourselves in the judgmental thought. And so we start with that. You know, we catch ourselves whenever we are being judgmental towards ourselves. And once we've got that down, we can then, every time a judgmental thought comes up, say, I am forgiving myself for having this thought, and I choose again. This is a phrase that I have learned from my amazing mentor, Gabby Bernstein. She uses this all the time, and I've kind of implemented it and made it my own. And what I've noticed is that whenever I am really catching my thought and being still with what is and repeating this phrase over and over and over again, it instantly helps me to reframe my thoughts into more positive ones. So the last step to this, the first one was being able to catch the thought. The second step was being able to really sit with yourself and use that phrase and forgive yourself for whatever you're thinking in this moment. And then the last step to this is to reframe your thoughts. So instead of thinking, oh my God, I should have worked out today, I'm not doing great, this has been the 5th time this week that I haven't done anything, I'm so lazy, you could think, oh, but I've taken care of this and that, and I'm taking care of my children today. I'm making sure that they are fed. I'm making sure that I am taking care of myself in other ways. And that can help us reframe our mind. And the more we do that, the less judgmental we'll get. So that is the first practice. The second practice is something I use whenever I am being too harsh on myself, and I know deep down that I don't need to be. And this is to, again, catch your thought, take a moment to sit still and breathe in, and then ask yourself, one, is this a helpful thought? Is this helping me in this moment? And second, is this a loving thought? And when you get both no's to both those questions, you know that this thought should be tossed somewhere in this universe where it's not anywhere near you. And what I like to do is I imagine putting it in a box, not putting a ribbon on it because it's not a cute thought, but I put it in a box and then I toss it somewhere into the universe where I can't see it. And some people like to imaginary burn it. And some people like to send it up in the sky with a balloon. But as long as it's out of your energy field, you're all good. Because as if the thought is not helpful and if the thought is not loving, then how can it help you raise your vibration? It won't, right? It will only drag you down. So we need to get rid of it. And what is really important with this is that we need to learn to breathe, to be with it, to feel it, but then release it when we don't need it any longer. And that's, I think, pretty powerful.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's very, very powerful, really, Mandy. So to recap what you just said, the first advice is to really take time to redirect your focus. If you find yourself thinking a negative thought or it's a negative self-judgmental thought towards yourself, just stop what you're doing, take a deep breath and start asking yourself if this thought was helpful. And then if the answer is no, just get rid of it and decide to put it in the trash. So that's the first advice. And then you also give us the advice of forgiving oneself and how important it is to really forgive yourself, because you just stop and change the thought of whatever negative thought that you're having. And that's really powerful. I really, really love these advices that you just gave us. So I really like to thank you so much, Mandy, for this powerful and beautiful and loving interview. And I'd like to thank you for being my guest today.
I am so happy to have been here. It was such a joy to do this.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And for everyone who'd like to follow or learn more about what Mandy does, you can follow her on her personal Facebook page. Her name again is Mand Schut, and I'll be adding this in the episode notes. And you can always also follow her on Instagram. Her account is called The Mindful Dream. Thank you, Mandy, and looking forward to having you again in our Healthy Way podcast in another episode.
You're so welcome, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you.
I truly hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode of the Healthy Way podcast with Shahi. You can always find any links mentioned on the show over on the show notes. If you haven't subscribed to the show already, remember to click on the subscribe button next to the podcast. If you scroll further down on the podcast page on your phone, you can tap to rate our show and leave your review on iTunes. I'll see you on the next episode.